Ayan na, daita, awanen. Naku po, sabi ko, ready na ako i-breakdown ang latest addition sa kabinete ng incoming President Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. Of course, ngayon medyo kompleto na yung economic team. Nakonperma yung ating spekulasyon na si Benjamin Jokno, no? Ang ating former budget secretary, someone who's been in the government in ERAP administration and Duterte administration. Para mukhang mahilig si Prof. Jokno sa mga ganitong type of leaders. And central banker, of course, ay magiging Department of Finance chief soon. Okay, that's interesting. And then, of course, with a former UP president, another UP person, and also Arsenio Balisacan naman sa NEDA. So, all UP, sana all ang magiging economic team ni Ferdinand Marcos Jr., our 17th, diba? 17th president. Pag-usapan ko din some of the more encouraging things that we saw in some of the discussions and dun sa talakayan, tete ni, should I pronounce it in the French way or in the English way? Ni Bongbong Marcos on issues regarding China at West Philippines. In fairness naman, may mga sinabi siya na medyo encouraging. But of course, eto kasi, so nakita niyo naman dun sa supposedly leaked list ng mga cabinet nominees, I think si Attorney Karen Jimena, a good friend of ours, I think, nilagay siya as potential spokesperson. Pero parang last month pa lang, sinabi ni, then of course, candidate, and then now 17th president, right? Ferdinand Marcos Jr. na ayaw niya ng spokesman, no? So, okay, interesting. Unity, di ba? Magaling daw eh. Of course, Oxford man, perfect attendance sa mga debates, and also I'm sure he can perfectly handle very prolonged discussions, very straight to the point, crystal clear, etc. Now, so sabi niya, parang hindi niya daw kailangan ng spokesperson. Okay, so let's get the direct quote. I want to get this completely right. Kasi hindi naman tayo vlogger junk food. Everything is based on verified facts, data, analysis, and reports. So sabi niya, hindi niya kailangan ng spokesman. Siya nang bahala. Kaya naman niya harapin. BBM says he won't need a spokesperson. He'll face the media on his own. So ito yung sinabi niya last month pa, April. Lahat yan. Resibo. Ayan na, resibo. Ito yung sinabi niya. Don't worry. Papunta tayo sa, ano ba yun? Ayan na naman. Ano ba yan? Solingen? Ayan na naman tayo eh. Ano yung mga piniposan tayo na Solingen na nail pusher na nail brush. Mamaya na tayo mag-Solingen, ha? Yung mga hindi na-gets ng sarcasm, umuwi na kayo, agawit kayo. Ito yung sinabi ni Oxford man. Palagay ko, hindi ako maglalagay ng spokesman. Haharap ako sa media. Ayan. Ito yung sinabi niya dun sa CNN Philippines anchor, na si Ruth Cabal. Dun sa In Private Presidential Interview. Siyempre, hindi sumali sa mga COMELEC debates and also, ito na lang, mga private one-on-one. I don't understand bakit may spokesman ang presidente. I think we have to now revisit that statement. Gusto ko tong quote na to. Post nga natin sa Twitter. Multi-platform. Ito sinabi ni incoming president natin. Ayan. Ito. Now we know. Okay. Now you know. Bakit kailangan ng spokesman minsan? Okay? Even nga si Tatay Digong, na napakadaldal ni Tatay. Alam mo ako, madaldal ako, minado ako. Pero si Tatay Digong, di ko talaga kaya eh. Ang kilala ko lang na kasing daldal ni Tatay Digong, guess who? Si Isko. Yung dalawa na yung pinakamadaldal na tao. Pero kanina, ito kasi, yan ang problema eh. Hindi kasi vlogger ang katapat natin. Pag totoong media ang kausap mo, pag legit media ang kausap mo, hindi na ito mga vlogger world. At no offense dun sa quote-unquote debate na yung mga nandun pala, nag-apply pala for trabaho sa kabinete. Kunyari, tanong-tanong as experts. Ayun tayo eh. Ito, ulitin ko. Ito yung sinabi niya. I don't understand bakit may spokesman ang presidente. Ngayon, alam natin bakit. Alright? Ito yung sinabi niya. Ito yung sinabi ni incoming president. I don't know kung bakit sinasabi that mahirap ako i-ambush interview. I'm always out in public. Pero syempre, we are doing something else also. Ano yun? Yung vloggers? I don't know why they say that because as I said, hindi naman ako pwedeng magtago. Tama naman. I'm always out in the public. Kaso lang, hindi sumali dun sa mga Comelec debates and all. Ayan. Yan kasi, daming vloggers. Ayan. O, sinabi niya, sabi niya, ito yung stance dun sa issue ng press secretary. They have a press officer, press secretary who conducts regular briefings, especially kung may malaking issue na pumutok. Magbe-briefing yan ngayon. If the president decides to make his own statement, pupunta sila and they will face the media. Balikan natin yung sistemang yon. So, okay. So, believe siya sa press secretary and then vlogger yung nilagay doon. Pero hindi siya believe sa spokesperson. Ulitin natin ha. Ito yung sinabi ni Street Man. I don't understand bakit may spokesman ang presidente. Ayan. Ayan tayo eh. Ayan tayo. Honestly, I'll be honest nung chine-check ko yung kasi umaga pa lang, may nag-message ng 11 a.m. mga ganun. Yung mga international media na anong take ko dun sa interview at saka talk ni Bongbong. Maaga! Sanay ako kay Tatay Digong na 11 p.m. pa lang. Sisimula ka pa lang. Ayan, mag-toothbrush na ako. Alam ko guys, meta 2 to, pero medyo na meta 1. Toothbrush na tayo. Facial wash, gano'n, malinis, gano'n. Ayan na. Tapos nakapajama ka na. Ito na, ready ka na, excited ka na. Lagay mo na yung laptop dun sa bed. Ayan. Simula na yung speech ni Tatay Digong. Ayan. Yun ang, sanay na tayo dyan yung mga midnighters. Yung, andyan na yung cream face mo. Yung, face cream mo. Tapos, ayan tayo na, alamano na. Ayan, ready na, may cucumber ka na, tapos higa ka, manood ka kay Tatay Digong, magda-notes ka doon. 11 p.m. Sanay na kasi ako doon. So yung biglang, maaga 11 a.m. Gano'n, okay to, ano nangyari? Aga, in fairness, So actually, later after, chinek ko yung live feed, at maayos. Okay talaga. I mean, I think, incoming president, Ferdinand Marcos Jr., he even discussed si Mahathir, yung model ni Mahathir. And then may sinabi siya something about corruption na yung mga dating corruption, kalimutan na natin. Parang, okay, that's an interesting point of view. Very convenient. And then, focus na lang tayo moving forward. So, I have to clarify with Dr. Mahathir, whom I interviewed, and medyo malapit din tayo sa kanya. Baka tanongin ko kay Tun Mahathir, Sir, ano yung ulit yung sinabi mo sa corruption sa Malaysia and all? Siniside ka dito ni BBM. So, akala ko okay na Tsaka interview na tayo. And then I like the fact that he covered a lot of issues. Again, I'll discuss that. In fairness kay Ferdinand Marcos Jr., he also had very balanced, very reasonable stance dun sa arbitration award natin, sa West Philippines, etc. So, ilabas ko yan mamaya. Pag-usapan natin yan. Pero, this is why also kailangan mo ng spokesman. Kung, guys, don't take it wrongly, but let me be honest, kung hindi mo talaga sobrang gamay yung mga media lingo or yung mga bureaucracy ng government. Okay? I mean, come on guys, yan kasi ang problema. Yung attack nila kay Lenny na nag-graduate ng UP School of Economics, nag-law school, etc., naging abogasya. Tawag sa kanya, Len, pinagtatawanan siya, lugaw daw, litaw daw, ganon. Ang point ko naman, kung magyabang ka ng ganyan, hi, let's be nice, unity, okay, unity. Sana naman, diba? Sana naman, alam natin na yung Solgen. Ayan tayo Ayan tayo. Nakita niyo na yung video, diba? Medyo hindi po social welfare, Solgen. Ay nako. Anyway, that is why minsan kailangan mo ng proper press secretary and briefing. That's why minsan kailangan mo ng press secretary. And then the president can have a much more address the nation kind of speech, yung mga fireside address, katulad ng ginawa ni FDR, no? Or yung style nila, Reagan, etc. Like, American people tonight. Ganun. Alam mo ganun, you can do those style, right? Pero yung ganitong press con na open, yan ang problema. There are things na you're gonna miss. Or, syempre, nakakapagod. I mean, mas bata si BBM kay Tatay Digong. Mas madaling basahin yung kanyang transcription. Yung kay Tatay Digong, hindi ko gets negation, affirmation, despondency. Parang in one paragraph, he said 3 things. Pero at least ito mas clear, mas ano. But of course, kaya nga kailangan mo na minsan siguro ng spokesman, etc. to deal with some of these technical issues and all of that. Kasi ang trabaho ng presidente, guys, is to, kung overseer ka, diba? Ikaw yung parang principal ng eskwela. Pero bahala na yung mga teachers, yung mga secondary deputies mo to really run the everyday. So you give the overall macro directions, diba? You make the big macro decisions, then you leave the macro ones there, no? Now, nonetheless, in fairness naman, na-appreciate ko yung effort ni Ferdinand Marcos Jr., ang ating parating na presidente, to show to the people that confident siya to discuss a whole range of issues. At hindi siya insecure, he's very confident. As I said, in fairness, the Presscon was going well. And I was just telling to media, etc. In fairness, kay incoming president, he's much more urbane, subdued, is much more, I think, familiar with the integrities and technicalities of issues and all. Although, of course, abogado si President Duterte, but sometimes parang hindi mo alam yung pinagsasabi. But yun nga ito yung mga ganitong mga bloopers moment and all. Laman, awanin. Okay. So, that's why you have spokesman and all. But again, let's be fair, guys. Ganito kasi ang problema. Huwag tayo mag-focus lang dun sa isang mistake and all of that. Let's look at the big picture and let's look at the cabinet, etc., what's going on. At the same time kasi, of course, yung sinasabi ng critics dyan, this is not the first time that we see these kinds of gaps. We also saw that, for instance, on confusion between ICC and ICJ, diba? International Criminal Court sa International Court of Justice, no? So, for some people, this is not isolated, it actually reflects something deeper. Ako naman, parang, okay guys, come on. I mean, you're giving a press con of 1 hour, 2 or 3 hours, magkakamali ka talaga. I mean, lahat naman tayo lahat naman tayo nagkakamali. I mean, I'm not rationalizing this. Of course, presidente ka, you're supposed to know all of the basics. What I'm saying that sometimes also, there'll be gaps in terms of speech, language, you misspeak. I make that mistakes sometimes too. I'm not a lot, but sometimes. Wala naman perfecto sa atin, di ba? Especially when you're talking a lot. I mean, I talk a lot, right? Right and left, I do like 5, 6 interviews, sometimes 2 to 3. Kaya nga, natatawa ako dun sa mga trying hard kong vloggers. Yung mga trying hard talaga. Napakasyo nga pa nung isa, kina-question yung use ko ng term na charm offensive. And this is verbalized. My goodness, if you're ignorante, if you're ignoramos, you don't know what's the word charm offensive. For heaven's sake, my good friend, a good friend of mine, si Joshua Corlanzig actually, he has a book called Charm Offensive, published by Yale University Press. Guys, if ignoramos ka, please just don't try, okay? And first, get interviewed by the top journalists in the world, and I said, before trying to question me. But anyway, this is not about me. We're talking about the president here. Ang akin lang naman kasi, yun nga palenlen and all of that attack. Tapos ngayon, anong defense nyo? Tapos atake nyo pa yung mga tao na nagpo-point out ng, ano ba to? Meron pa lang Solingen. Ano tong Solingen? Ngayon ko lang nakita to Nail pusher, ibang klase. Talagang mga tao, ready. May lightning na, galit na si Tor. Ay, mabait na ako. Okay. Let's be fair. Okay. Now, guys, we are doing all of this in the spirit of good humor. Please don't take it wrong. Ang akin lang naman, please, don't you agree with me, guys? If you're gonna attack the other camp as ek, tapos, diba? At the same time naman, presidente ka, there's an expectation that you have a certain basic familiarity with the organs of government, with institutions of government, with key positions, including Solgen. But at the same time, yes, ang sinasabi ko rin dito is let's not make mountain out of molehill. Let's not try to replicate the strategy of the other side if you don't agree with them and you think it's unfair. And, we want our president to succeed. Sabi nga ni Bongbong Marcos, if the president does well, the country does well, panalo lahat ng Pilipino. So, yun lang. At sinasabi ko, dito mo rin makikita na kailangan mo ng spokesman sometimes, right? Or maybe if you're gonna do an address, you have to keep it within a certain limit and all. Okay? Now, please don't get me wrong, okay? We have to point out these things because these are the gaps you don't want to see, right? And hopefully, we'll see those gaps lessen, and hopefully alam na natin yung difference between ICC, ICJ, they have completely different mandates. One deals with territorial disputes between countries, among nations. One deals with criminal cases on an individual basis. All right, so these are very different issues, technical issues. And you expect your president to have some basic familiarity. Not to be expert, but basic familiarity. Now, let's go to the next point. Medyo sumakit yung biceps natin dun sa Kaya, pinost natin, mga picture natin na nagmuni-muni dun sa sunken garden sa Ayun na, medyo sumakit na yung biceps natin dyan. Grabe, may nag-comment, sir, next time mag-post ka na nakasando. Ako, tambay sa kanto. Tapos, may tattoo pa. Tapos, pagkausap ko kayo, nagkakamot ako dito. Alam mo guys, kasi, alam mo yung gano'n, yung parang barangay chairman lang. Nagkakamot-kamot habang nag-uusap. Dinidiscuss yung mga issues. Tapos, nakasando, tapos ni-stretch kunyari, pa-flex na kunyari na may konting triceps dito na fine-flex. Okay. Alright. Okay. Now, let's go to the next issue, which is the economic team. So, mukhang a number of people initially discussed or in the conversation said no. Ayaw nila. Now, nonetheless, it seems the option eventually settled on Jokno, who I know was really very, very interested. Ignoramos. Yeah. There is such a term. Guys. May natutunan na naman kayo today. Okay. Balikan natin to. Ayan kasi talaga yung mga ibang vloggers. My goodness. I doubt these people have read a single proper book in their entire life at yabang-yabang pa sila sa akin. Mabait lang ako I mean, pag akong sinubukan niyo ako baka wala na. Okay, I'm kind. I'm too busy to make patol to these low lives. Going back to this, pero medyo patulan natin ng konti kasi fun din aminin ko, natutuwa rin ako. Ito kasi, okay, speaking of Jokno, Jokno din to ito pamilyang Jokno, no? So talagang mga high achievers, mga Jokno, Chel Jokno, so mga Jokno to, matatalino, maraming economists, maraming lawyers sa kanila, mahusay itong mga to. Naging prof ko actually, yung anak po ni Secretary Jokno sa UP School of Econ. Ma'am, if nanonood kayo sa akin, thank you very much. Yung maganda yung mga natin dyan, basic public sector economics natin, mga ganun. Okay, sa UP School of Economics. Yun! Okay, speaking of Jokno is a guy who would have no problems, no qualms working with... Oh my God, narinig yung grabe, nagagalit na yung Sorry, Lord. I mean, I'm just being nice here, okay? Sorry, Lord. I mean, I hope I'm not saying anything wrong. Okay, now, going back to this, seriously speaking. Jokno seems to be a guy who's comfortable working with any kind of president, especially the controversial ones, right? I mean, last time I checked, he also worked under ERAP. He has worked under Duterte, so that's quite a prestigious cabal. Lawas natin, So he's a kind of technocrat who can work with controversial, populist kind of leaders, no? So, wala siyang problema dealing with the Marcos. So, I think wala siyang concern dun sa cancel ba. At medyo maboka din tong si Jokno I mean, I've crossed paths with him, not necessarily in bad way. I've seen him in speeches and all. My time na nag-speech siya, tapos ako nag-speech dun sa mga big companies and all. He's a feisty guy, fiery guy. Tapos, he's trying to be a little bit Twitter-ish and influencer-ish. Not as witty and all, but I can see his effort to be medyo palaban and all. So he's exactly the kind of technocrat that populists or people like Marcos Jr. can work with perfectly. Now, his track record, you can say, is debatable because on one hand, he's known for running budget deficits and being unorthodox in terms of his approach to economics. But on the other hand, some would say that's actually what makes him interesting because hindi siya confined doon sa parang hindi siya na confined doon sa neoliberal straitjacket. I mean, just to simplify what I'm saying. Essentially, we have to keep the inflation low, we have to keep interest rates low, growth should be secondary, expenditure should be kept at the minimum level, etc. No, he's more like, and I think that was the problem with the Aquino administrations and all, they were too fiscally conservative. The thing with Benjamin Jokno is, and we saw that as a budget secretary earlier, is that he believes in what? Ito guys, hindi wag lang ignoramos. Let me teach you another term today. expansionary fiscal policy. Okay? Isulat niyan, expansionary fiscal policy. Now, this goes back to a great economist. Pangalan niya is John Maynard Keynes, one of my biggest inspirations. Cambridge siya, hindi siya Oxford, man. Now, John Maynard Keynes is a very influential person. He played a key role in the development of so-called Bretton Woods institutions. All of this IMF, World Bank, WTO, etc. In one way or another, they owe it. The whole idea is grounded very much in the works of Keynes and then some other American guy. We can talk about that later on. But you see, the idea of expansionary fiscal policy is this. Okay lang na gumastos ka ng konti ngayon if that creates growth, and then that growth can create you more income. So even if lumaki yung, medyo economics na tayo. So ganito So, iakyat mo yung utang mo, right? Ng konti. Or, iakyat mo yung budget deficit mo, alright? So I'm just trying to simplify this macroeconomics to you. But if that extra expenditure or expansion in fiscal deficit can create you this much growth, right? The difference here will make up for the difference here. Do you get what I'm saying? So this minus this, you'll still have an additional of this. So even if lumaki yung utang mo, lumaki yung budget deficit mo, if you can create more growth, you can create more infrastructure, you can create more employment, the net benefit, meaning the additional gain, the marginal gain you get minus the marginal cost, which is added budget deficit, added debt, etc., it not only evens out, but actually come up with a net plus. So, again, I'm very much simplifying this idea, but Jokno tends to be more Keynesian, right? Tends to be more open to the idea of a little bit running the budget deficit, a little bit spending more, but you create better infrastructure. You create more growth. And in fairness, when Ben Jokno was in charge of the Department of Budget and Management, we actually almost doubled our share of infrastructure spending. Yung infrastructure spending to GDP ratio natin actually almost doubled. I think lampas na tayo ng 5% within the first few years of President Duterte. So that allowed for us to have that infrastructure build-up. Now, ibang tanong, guys, yung implementation ng projects. DPWH na yan, ibang sectors na yan. Marami bang ibang... but I'm talking about budget allocations. So Jokno is known for a guy who's willing to take a little bit of a risk, a little bit push up the budget deficit, a little bit push up the debt, right? Or the debt ceiling. But if this creates more growth, more infrastructure, so be it. Now, that's his track record. Hindi ko alam anong gagawin niya ngayon sa Department of Finance kasi, syempre, iba yung panahon ngayon. The situation was different during ERAP. You were coming after the macroeconomic stabilization of Ramos. The situation is also different now kasi nagka-pandemic tayo at lumaki yung utang natin. So, I'm not gonna preempt what Benjamin Jokno is gonna do. But what I'm saying here is, ito po yung background ni Jokno. No? He's known to be, I'll teach you another term, unorthodox. Alright? Unorthodox. So, hindi lang ignoramos yung dapat matutunan nyo today. Learn two other things, guys. Unorthodox, or actually there's another term similar to that, heterodox. Heterodox means medyo mixing things up. Diba? Hindi ka lang tumutugma doon sa script. Right? So in this case, neoliberalism. Now, we can have a completely different lecture on neoliberalism. But general neoliberalism means minimum inflation, high interest rates, and then low inflation, and then growth and especially employment is secondary, right? But heterodox economists like Benjamin Jokno actually believe more in. So I have to clarify that. So low inflation, high interest rate, less emphasis on employment. But heterodox economists, I think Ben Jokno kind of falls into that, believe in higher growth, higher emphasis on employment, which is Keynesian economics, right? So let's see what he's going to do once he's the finance secretary. But I'm just giving you my honest understanding of him as a technocrat over the past 20 years in the top positions that he occupied. For me, it could be hit or miss. Let's see. But he's an interesting guy. And he's a guy who can work with very controversial presidents. Wala siyang issue. Good luck trying to cancel him. Wala siyang pake. Malakas ang dating ng taong yan. I'm telling you. Alright? At alam natin, of course, this... now, Arsenio Balisacan, of course, ang background po ni Balisacan is really in agricultural economics and all. So I think he could be a very helpful guy pagdating sa issues of food security, helping agricultural productivity, helping our farmer sector, etc. So I think it's a very, very good choice. He has done fantastic academic work also on that. And I think, I don't know, maybe Jokno and Balisacan, of course, they have been colleagues in UP School of Economics, just where Lenny graduated. Yes, she graduated. She actually graduated from something. Mamaya na tayo mag-solve dyan. Okay, balikan natin. So I think, if Balisacan is a little bit more aggressive in terms of helping the agricultural sector, right? And the manufacturing sector. And then at the same time, if Jokno is a little bit more creative and heterodox or unorthodox dun sa infrastructure spending and the budget ceiling issue and all, if we can keep on doing that without undermining our credit rating significantly, thank God we have preserved the good credit rating, so medyo mura pa rin para sa atin umutang, then I think this combination might still just work. And that is why I said I won't be surprised under Marcos Jr. we could have full recovery by early next year and actually high economic growth rate of 5 to 6% for the foreseeable future. So I think it kind of can work. Now, of course, sa DTI, isa pang UP person ang kinuha, former, of course, UP president. Nakabutan ko lahat yan. Nag-aaral ako. And by the way, of course, no, of course, this is Alfred Pascual, no? Sir, so Professor Pascual, siya ang Secretary of Department of Trade and Industry sa DTI. Now, honestly, I think DTI and DFA should really work together. Now, we don't know still sino maging DFA, parang sobrang suspense naman yung DFA and DND. Because I think DTI and DFA should work together because ang trabaho din dapat ng DFA is to promote our export-oriented industries and also get us the best trading agreements abroad. So I think if they can work in lockstep with the Department of Trade and Industry, the two of them, I think, can help the country. In fact, sa Australia po, kasama po yung dalawang department na yan eh. So yung Foreign Ministry at saka Trade and Industry, parang kasabay sila. So they're kind of coordinating to make sure na we can get the most number of free trade agreements, fair deal from all of these agreements, i-promote natin yung export-oriented industries, we can get the cheapest possible imports for food security and lowering of inflation, all of those things. So, mahalaga na si Sir Pascual will work very well with our incoming Foreign Secretary, whether this is Professor Clarita Carlos, whether this is Ambassador Romualdez, or a career DFA person, or someone I don't know about. But more or less, those are the two leading persons in the position for the Department of Foreign Affairs. So let's look at that. So this is an interesting one. This is an interesting situation we're looking at. So I think we want, once again, not too dissimilar from the father. I kept on telling you he would want to. I mean, his story doesn't repeat as Mark Twain said, but it rhymes. So we see this once again a UP-dominated technocratic cabinet, at least in some of this position. Mamaya na yung usapan ng press secretary and all of that. But you have an all-UP team running the key economic positions. A lot of them have been colleagues. They have worked together for years, sometimes even more decades. So hopefully, kaya nga dito, guys, mahalaga yung trabaho ng presidente. Kasi the president will give you the overall lay of the land. He'll give you the coordinates and say, pwede kayo maglaro dito. Parang referee, di ba? Maglaro na kayo within this. Be as creative as you can, but don't get out of these parameters. Or if ever we have to get out of these parameters, the president has to clear that. So that's a top chief executive prerogative, right? So I think if Marcos Jr. can provide this kind of overall, overarching vision of a kind of a more unorthodox, aggressive, growth, employment-oriented, infrastructure-driven economic agenda, I think Balisacan and Jokno can work it out together well. And then if Pascual can work it well with the Department of Foreign Affairs, two of them coordinate in terms of ang dun sa mga trade agreements natin, etc., then I think we can also move forward in the right direction. Alright? Okay. So, mamaya na tayo dun pupunta sa mga ibang mga other secondary cabinet position. Wag mo na ako comment sa DepEd, di ko alam gagawin. But I hope you guys, you're appreciating what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to show you that dapat dito sa kabinete, meron kang level of coordination among these key cabinet members. Dapat they have, parang team yun. Parang it's like football, guys. You have to have a forward player, center forward, mga ganun, tapos wing players. But at the same time, you really need referee. You need good coach. And the coach will make sure anong formation ang best and what will be it will be an attack formation, defense formation, 4-3-3, 4, you know what I'm saying? So, yun yung magiging trabaho ni Bongbong Marcos. So, we don't expect Bongbong Marcos to be a technocratic expert in everything. Of course, it's always better to have a president who is as smart and achiever as possible. But generally, it's really the overall overarching directions that he has to provide. And then let's see paano mag-mix. My preliminary assessment, of course, things could change as facts on the ground develop, is that I think this is a good mix. I think this is a good, let's have a new term, guys, a technocratic alchemy. That's a nice term. I'll use it myself. So I think we have a good technocratic alchemy here. Because the combination of these guys in charge of these key cabinet positions, I think, is pretty good. Sorry, I'll use it as. Alam mo naman tayo, we come up with ideas and then we want to make use of it. Now, I wanted to go to the next one, but I think I'll leave this for another discussion, lalong-lalo na kung meron na tayong announcement dun sa DFA and DND, because I want to discuss more yung issue ng China and West Philippines. And in fairness, at least based on preliminary assessment, good signals ang nakikita natin sa ating bagong Pangulo. Right? Hindi ito yung I love China, and hindi ito yung wala tayong mga gawa. In fairness kay Ferdinand Marcos Jr., I think he has sent some good signals. But I want to discuss that more in detail once we have the DFA and DND persons. I think more or less tomorrow. All right? But so far, my preliminary analysis of the cabinet is that, aside from some of the bloopers today and all, is that I think there's proper technocratic alchemy here. And these guys might just pull it off. Meaning put us on a good path towards not only full economic recovery, but long-term infrastructure development and relatively high, if not above average growth rate. All right? So I'll keep it there. Thank you very much, guys. May mga tanong ba kayo? Thank you very much. Sorry, let me... Post ko tong technocratic alchemy. Baka manakawan yung term ko. Yeah. Okay, let me post that. Okay, guys, thank you very much again kay... Thank you dun sa mga sumusuporta sa atin. Sorry guys, I mean, medyo late tayo. But I'm glad that many people are tuning in. We have still at least 3,000 people plus who have been tuning in. So that's good. Parang mas maganda nga sa gabi na tayo, di ba? Parang 7-8 p.m. Mas maganda na yata kaysa araw. Busy rin talaga kayo eh. So I think this will be a better schedule. Medyo 24 oras. And you can see, medyo mas kalmado tayo. Walang excess energy because nagtrabaho tayo buong day. So by this time, we're much more economized. So wala tayong masyadong side comments and all. So yun. So this is my preliminary assessment. Good technocratic alchemy. So I'm looking at it as if I'm looking at, for instance, I'm analyzing a football team, right? So good combination of key players here. And these are people who might just pull it off for high growth or swift economic recovery in the coming years. And ewan ko, sir, baka naman kailangan natin ng spokesman. I'm not volunteering myself. I'm just saying, baka kailangan din natin ng spokesman minsan. Just to avoid those things. Kasi yun nga eh, gusto ko sana, excited na ako pag-usapan tong joke, no, balisakan, Pascual, technocratic alchemy. And then biglang ito, na-solgen tayo. Kaya tuloy, ayan tayo. Sabi ko, sige, let me just clear the air and then go there. Okay? Alright, so... Not to be mayabang, but of course the UP pride in me is also there. I'm very glad that I see a lot of our professors and colleagues and all, or people we have known through the years, are gonna serve the country and uphold the national interest. Sabi ko nga parate, we may have our own political opinions, we may have our preferences and choices, we may have not voted for the current president, but we want whoever is the president of the Philippines is to do well when he has to do well. And getting the economic question right is extremely importante. Todo importante, okay? Todo importante. So me prefiero this, this technocratic alchemy, okay? Bien. I mean, I'm not gonna say that, super good, but bien. And I'm a little bit hopeful about how this could go. So, I don't know, hasta mañana, let's check what will happen next. But so far, so good. So far, bien. Bien. Okay? Right. Ano na? Claro? Comprende? Ano, may tanong ba tayo dyan? Ayan tayo eh. Just to be clear, I'm not saying, I'm not volunteering to be spokesman of everyone, or anyone, sorry. But what I'm saying is, maybe we may need a spokesman at some point, just to avoid all of these things. Para focus tayo dun sa key issues, important issues. So please guys, kung sinong binoto nyo, whatever, don't shoot the messenger, okay? I'm just trying my best here, guys, to give you quite entertaining but very substantive as much as possible within the circumstances and the medium we're dealing with. Analysis, real time, real talk analysis dito sa ating politika at saka dito sa ating kabinete para naman maintindihan natin saan papunta or saan patungo yung ating bansa. Alright? Yes, may mga data, ayan na. Yeah, I get it. Okay, minsan may awanin, nyamet, may ganun moments, but let's be fair, okay? Case-to-case basis. So, whether you voted for Marcos or not, this is my preliminary assessment. Good, technocratic, alchemy. Good job so far. I like that. I like that trio. And I really hope it works out. And hopefully kung sino yung next DFA secretary will also work in lockstep with the DTI secretary so that we can get this moving para makuha po natin isang digital trade with America, good free trade agreements, good negotiation with China, with Japan, with all of our partners, with India, with ASEAN partners. Go tayo, okay? At the end of the day, para sa atin to, para sa ating bansa ito, guys. I know disappointed yung iba dyan sa resulta. I know yung iba defensive. Dahil yung kandidato nila nanalo pero may mga Solgen moments. I get it. But please understand what we're trying to do here is to medyo iangat natin yung level of ng